this example, using this table, this is the Titanic table. How many people died, how many people survived. It's broken down by first class, second class, third class crew, and we have all the totals. So what is the probability that a passenger on the Titanic was a first class passenger who died? So the key here is, how does this start? It starts with the probability that a passenger on the Titanic. So passenger on the Titanic. We're talking about everybody. So we're talking about this number right here, 2201. That's our total. So that's going to go on the bottom. Let me change the color. So 2201 goes on the bottom. And then the second part says, was a first-class passenger who died. So we're going to go to our table. We're going to look at first-class passengers. And we're going to look at how many of them died. Well, that's 122 first-class passengers died. So that's going to be our top number. So we have 122 over 2201. As usual, we want to change this to a decimal and to a percent. The decimal there is approximately 0.055. So we could say that's about 5.5%. So if you had the names of everybody on the Titanic and you chose one name at random, there would be a 5.5% chance that you would draw a first-class passenger who died. Let's look at our second example. What is the probability that a first-class passenger on the Titanic died? That sounds like the same thing, but it's worded a little differently. If we look here how it starts, it says, what is the probability that a first-class passenger? So right away, we're not talking about all 2,201 people. We're only talking about the first-class people, the 325 people in first class. So here our bottom number is going to be 325. So it's important to look at, like, what are you starting with here? What group are you choosing from? So here it's first class, and then how many of those people died? Well, we look at the table, 122 died. We knew that from the previous problem. So it's 122 over 325. I'll put that in the calculator, and we find that that's about 37.5%. So 0.375, 37.5%. So make sure to write it all three ways, as a fraction, as a decimal, and as a percent, because you'll be asked for different ways on different problems. One important note, sometimes you'll see something like example 2 worded a little differently. So they might start out, what is the probability that a passenger on the Titanic died? So that kind of gives the impression you're talking about everybody, but then it adds this phrase, given that the passenger was in first class. That little phrase, given that, tells you that you're only dealing with this group here, the first class group. So you do the same thing we did right here. You start with first class, see how many you have, and that's your bottom number. So hopefully that makes sense. Those are kind of the two types of problems you get when you're doing probability with a table. So let's look at some problems here. Here's the first set of problems. There's 5 of them. I would like you to pause the video here and work these out. Write the answers down on your paper. Make sure to write it in all 3 forms, fraction, decimal, and percent. All right, now that you're done with that set of questions, there's one more set of questions with a different table. Here we have a table. This is people in different grades being surveyed about whether they would eat food from the school cafeteria. So one thing you'll notice about this chart, it doesn't give you any totals. So you'll need to figure out what is the total of the 9th graders or the 10th graders. You might need to find the total of the yeses or nos depending on the question. So look at the 3 questions you have and give these a try using this table, and don't forget to find your totals to get that bottom number. So you can pause the video and do these 3 questions on your paper. All right, now that you're done with that, that's it for this activity. You can move on to the next one, which is going to involve a little bit different type of probability.